Hello, welcome to Ask a Garden Coach, a show that I have designed to answer your questions about gardening. My hope is that you have actionable steps to put into action in your garden right now that will give you confidence and that you will enjoy the gardening process along the way. This week's episode, we're talking about winter sowing because, well, it's winter and we want to plant things. I did a poll online and asked people, do they know what winter sowing is? And I got kind of a 50-50 split. Some people did, some people didn't. So I want to give you guys some basic understanding of winter sowing, and then I have a bunch of questions to hop into today. So first, winter sowing, what is it? Simply put, planting seeds outside in the winter. That's really all it is. However, when you start going all over the internet and you're searching for winter sowing, what you usually come upon is people with a whole bunch of recycled containers like this that are cut open, filled with soil, drainage is put in, and they tape them shut and they put them in a snowbank and let the seeds grow. Okay? Why does it work? When you have something like this, what you are doing is essentially creating a greenhouse. You have a controlled environment. The solar radiation is going to come in through this clear material, and it's going to warm up the soil inside this container. What does that do? Well, those teeny tiny little seeds inside are just below the surface. So the surface of the soil is going to warm up. Seeds are going to be signaled to germinate, and they're going to grow. But that soil warming up is going to happen at a specific time as the winter starts to break. And so seeds that are started outside like this, they tend to germinate very accurate, like all about the same time. They tend to not get leggy because grow lights inside are not nearly as bright as even the winter sun outside. They're used to the cold environments. So those seedlings are usually stronger. They tend to be smaller when they go into the garden than ones that are grown inside, but the transition to the garden is much less shocking. So that's really what winter sowing is. If you have more specific questions about winter sowing, leave those questions in the comments and I will make sure to answer them for you. So with that little basis of understanding, let's hop into today's questions. The first one is, can I sow snapdragon seeds directly outside? If so, when? Well, the short answer is yes, but you have to think about a few things first. One, snapdragons are a hardy plant. They're technically a short-lived perennial. So if you live in a warmer climate, zone 7, 8, or higher, and it doesn't get too hot, you might have found that your snaps will come back year after year. I have a yellow one that's come back 3 years in a row, and it's just trugging along. So because it is cold hardy, it's actually a perfect candidate for winter sowing. It doesn't need a ton of heat to germinate. And if you sow them on the surface, because they need light to germinate, you can get some really strong seedlings by using winter sowing on your snapdragons. So if you want to direct sow them into the garden, you can do that by creating a covering. And so instead of doing it in the milk jug, you can just plant the seeds in the garden, tip over a clear tote, or get a cloche, one of those glass dome cloches, or you can get plastic ones, doing a row cover, anything that will help to hold some of that solar warmth in. We'll get those started much sooner, much stronger. And then as soon as the weather warms, you can take the cover off and you're off to the races. The next question is, a lot of people don't have greenhouses. What are your favorite annuals or perennials to sow directly? And that's from my friend Andrea. So greenhouses come in all sizes. Really, you have to understand what exactly is a greenhouse and what does it do and how does it work. So to technically be a greenhouse, it has to be climate controlled. Heat and cooling to keep the temperature and the light and everything else very consistent. Like industrial greenhouses leave nothing to the natural elements. Like they are doing everything to control it. Most of what we think of as greenhouses are more of a cold frame. They are not heated or cooled in any way other than solar radiation coming through the material and venting to keep things from getting too hot. right? So when we think of greenhouses, most backyard gardeners and hobby farmers, that's more of what they have instead of a environment controlled greenhouse. So if that's the case, you really can make a greenhouse out of just about anything. You can use plastic sheeting thrown over some PVC that's curved, make your own little mini high tunnel or a low tunnel. You have a greenhouse. Milk jugs, greenhouse. Little shoe container from the hardware store with some holes poked into it to allow for the hot air to escape, greenhouse. So really, don't feel like you have to spend thousands of dollars to have a greenhouse. You could even go on to some of the free sites online looking for like recycled windows. And you can toss that recycled window on top of a raised bed. And what have you just made but a greenhouse? Those are called cold frames. But what is a cold frame but a mini greenhouse, right? All right, so let's talk then about what annuals or perennials to sow directly. So those ones would be cold hardy. We talked about snaps being cold hardy or frost hardy. Those are ones that you can sow directly outside, and especially our Pacific Northwest where I am, in our long cold springs, those are the ones that will be able to keep up with our cool temperatures. If you live in a place that goes from winter to spring to summer, and spring is like a ramp up, then you can sow a lot more things directly in the ground. So really just understand your ecosystem. Perennials. Well, perennials, we're going to come back to perennials in a little bit because I have another question to go along with that one. So a few things you could do for annuals would be like calendula, phlox, sweet peas. Those ones are really good ones to start direct sow early in the spring. They like the cold and they will wake up when they're ready. Also, you could consider sowing directly things like foxglove or money plant, lunaria, or hollyhock. Technically a perennial, but it doesn't bloom the first year. So I kind of think of it as kind of a biennial-ish plant. Those ones are really good to sow midsummer. But if you're sowing anything midsummer, just make sure those seeds don't dry out. And like I said, we'll come back to the perennial question in just a minute. So the next question is, what plants do you winter sow? And do you start all yours at once or start some later than others? Okay, so I have winter sowed flowers and some cool season veggies, and that's really what I've seen a lot of other people that do winter sowing gravitate towards, things that can handle frost. If it's any kind of tropical seed, they're not going to do well in the cold anyway because they're not native to those cold places. That's not their germinating environment, right? So stick to things that are native to more temperate regions. China, North America, Northern Europe, those types of plants are going to be perfect for winter sowing. Flowers, some ideas would be things like alyssum, calendula, coreopsis, cosmos, echinacea, poppy, feverfew, sweet peas. Vegetables would be things like beets, broccoli, all of your brassicas like broccoli, cabbage, kale, Brussels sprouts, all of those, great for winter sowing. And then herbs. Most perennials really do well with winter sowing, and it's because of something called cold stratification. And I had my friend Paula suggest maybe talk about cold stratification. I think a lot of people don't know what that is or when you might do it. Cold stratification, what is it? Seeds, especially of perennial plants, they are amazing in that they're designed that when they fall off of a plant, when they are ripe, they will not germinate when those temperatures are warm right away. They first have to go through a period of cooling, of really, really cold in some cases, and that's called cold stratification. And this process of seeds being subjected to cold, these seeds often have hard coats on the outside. So it allows the moisture to soften the coat on the outside. It allows for some chemical reactions to happen. Shoot, some critter might be walking along having a little snack and leaving it on the other end. And that process of fermenting in the digestive tract can also prepare seeds for germinating in the spring. And so A lot of perennials, you get things like lavender, and people think lavender is incredibly hard to germinate. Well, that's because it needs cold stratification. And there are a lot of perennials, most shrubs, most trees all require some degree of cold stratification. A lot of them need only 30 days, but there are some that need up to 2 years of cold stratification before they will germinate. I actually had some seeds from a neighbor's camellia tree, her big, beautiful camellia bush. And she brought me some seeds, and I put it, and I did essentially a winter sowing, put it out in the garden, and my adorable little camellia is like 5 inches tall, and I'm so excited because I grew it from seed, and that always makes me feel real good. So, is cold stratification required on everything? No, it's not. Most of your garden vegetables, you're not going to need to cold stratify. But a lot of flowers, yes. Perennials, yes. And when in doubt, it doesn't hurt. So the process of cold stratification is exposing plants to cold temperatures and moisture. So just by having your seeds stored in a refrigerator is not cold stratification. You need to then expose them to moisture. So you can use a petri dish with some medium inside and put your seeds on top and have it be moist and put it into a cold place for like a refrigerator for a couple of weeks. And then you'll actually see the seeds start to germinate in the fridge. It's so cool. And then you take them out, you pot them up, and you're good to go. When you do winter sowing, you're essentially cold stratifying them the way that God intended. They're already outside, right? And so that's where winter sowing can be really, it can help you up your game for getting perennials and other hard to germinate seeds to happen that you might have tried inside. Take them outside, do it that way. And one more tip on winter sowing is hot glue guns work wonders for drainage holes. You can never have too many methods of labeling. So yeah, hot glue gun, little heat source, melt that plastic. Yeah, it works really, really well. A drill works well too. Tips on labeling things if you're going to have it be outside. Go for a permanent marker that is oil-based. That one won't fade as much as, goodness, I need to not hit this thing. I did it in the last video too. Let's see. What was I saying? I was saying something and it was really interesting.
2 hours later.
Markers. That's what it was. So if you have your permanent marker, make sure they're oil-based so they won't wash away. And then when you're labeling your little seed tags, you might be thinking, okay, ballpoint pen, pen, pencil. It seems counterintuitive, but pencil does not rub off and fade like pen does. I have tried this many times and my pencil markings always stick around. So those are my winter sowing tips for today. Again, if you have questions, please put them in the comments below. I really want to help you in the garden. And I also would love your support. Please like and subscribe to my channel and hit the notification bell. I plan on having these episodes out every Tuesday. And so we'll keep the questions coming and keep the garden knowledge growing. Thank you so much for watching, and we will see you in the next video.